Olympics is a giant scam. There's two things going on simultaneously, okay? You have the best athletes in the world participating in their disciplines. That's happening. And then on top of that, you have enormous amounts of money being made, and none of it's going to the athletes. It is a giant scam. The kind of people that are putting together that ridiculous opening ceremony where you got a bunch of drag queens and the Last Supper and all that.
Yeah, well, I didn't
shit.
understand that.
Nobody understands it because it's...
Joe Rogan just dropped a bombshell. Could the woke agenda really be the downfall of the Olympics? What went so wrong that one of the world's biggest sporting events is now facing its worst nightmare?
By the people that are in charge of putting the Olympics out. So they're the ones who are reaping all the money and sucking all the...
Is this what happens when politics and sports collide? And how did it all unravel so fast? Rogan's got the inside scoop, and you'll want to hear why he thinks the Olympics have lost everything.
And then after that, nothing. So, and then all the people there who are poor are like, hey, where the fuck did this money come from? And why didn't you just spend it on the community? Why did you...
So let's dig into the controversy and find out what's really going on. The 2024 Paris Games are in full swing, and China's already flexing its muscles at the top of the medal table. Team GB is killing it too, snagging multiple gold medals across various events. Talk about a strong start.
Be more athlete focused, for sure. And not so much like a show or
they
like
let
this,
some
like,
wacky gay...
These games are drawing in massive crowds, as you'd expect. Over 28 million people in the U.S. alone are glued to NBC and Peacock, cheering on their favorite athletes. It's not just the U.S. going crazy. The global audience is huge, with fans all around the world tuning in to catch the action.
24 was the first Olympic Games to achieve gender parity, with the same number of male and female athletes.
But the 2024 Olympics has been one big controversy, and Joe Rogan isn't staying quiet about it. Despite all the hype promising something spectacular, the Paris 2024 Summer Games have been mired in backlash. From the inclusion of transgender boxers to accusations of desecrating and disrespecting Christianity, these Olympics have stirred up plenty of drama.
So my suggestion of the LGBT community, are you intentionally trying to create enemies? Or is this just haphazardly showing up in your agenda?
And not everyone is on board with the hype. Joe Rogan, host of the massively popular podcast The Joe Rogan Experience, is definitely not a fan. Even with some of the world's top athletes going head-to-head, Rogan didn't hold back, slamming the games and calling them a giant scam. The Olympics is a giant scam, Rogan claimed. There's two things going on simultaneously, okay? You have the best athletes in the world participating in their disciplines, that's happening. And then on top of that, you have enormous amounts of money being made, and none of it is going to the athletes. It is a giant scam. Rogan continued, revealing that the extraordinary competitors at the Olympic Games aren't benefiting nearly enough for the amount they bring in. Joe Rogan didn't mince words when he took aim at the 2024 Paris Olympics, criticizing the people behind the event. He pointed out how the opening ceremony, with its mix of drag queens and a reimagining of the Last Supper, was baffling to most people. According to Rogan, it wasn't about the athletes or the true spirit of the Olympics. Instead, it was driven by those in charge of producing the games.
Athletes. It's not made by the Olympics. It's made by the people that are in charge of putting the Olympics out. So they're the ones who are reaping all the money and sucking all the cash.
Rogan also took issue with how the money flows, making it clear that the ones running the show are the ones profiting, not the athletes who make the games what they are. He called out the organizers for raking in billions in television and advertising revenue while giving little to the athletes.
They do that, but then they'll go to places like Brazil, and so if it's going to be in Brazil, they build this fucking enormous place for it to participate in, all the different arenas where different people do their thing. And
he didn't hold back in calling out the system, suggesting that the Olympics are essentially robbing the athletes who compete. Rogan's comments have certainly stirred the pot, adding more controversy to an already contentious event. Joe Rogan didn't hold back his frustration, questioning why anyone would tune in to watch a bunch of trans performers pretending to be Jesus and the disciples during the Olympics. He argued that viewers aren't interested in that. They're tuning in to see the real competition, the 100-meter dash, the sprints, the boxing matches. That's what people care about, he emphasized.
Tuning in to see who's going to win the 100-meter dash.
Yeah.
Who's going to win this? Who's going to win that? Who's going to win the sprints? Who's going to win... event is, who's going to win boxing. That's what people are tuning in. And those...
Rogan also expressed his disappointment at how the athletes, who have dedicated their entire lives to competing in the Olympics, aren't getting their fair share. He pointed out how crazy it is that they don't see a dime from the massive revenue generated by the games.
Dedicated their entire lives to wrestle in the Olympic Games. They're not getting a fucking scratch of that.
That's so crazy.
It's nuts.
It is a common belief now that athletes don't get any cash directly from the International Olympic Committee, IOC, for competing or winning medals. The Olympics originally celebrated pure athleticism, and revenue is instead funneled to international federations and National Olympic Committees, NOCs. However, some governing bodies have started paying athletes who win gold. For example, World Athletics is making waves by offering prize money at the Paris 2024 Games, with an approximately $2.4 million USD prize pot and gold medalists set to receive approximately $50,400 USD. This prize structure is set to continue at the Los Angeles Games in 2028. But Joe, though, believes the Olympics had noble beginnings but is now hampered by television networks. He argues that these networks are largely responsible for the stagnation in athlete pay, shifting the blame away from the original ideals of the games.
Pure chaos. Well, at one point in time, there was probably no money in the Olympics because there was no television, right?
Okay, yeah.
So at one point in time, the Olympics was just about the best athletes in the world competing against the other best.
Well, it seems like his claims are quite concerning because Olympics are being accused of woke. The Olympics are supposed to be all about the awe-inspiring feats of athletes from around the world, the triumphs, the sportsmanship, the emotional backstories, and the proud parents cheering in the stands. It's a celebration of dreams, hard work, and human spirit. So it's pretty disheartening that this year's games are getting caught up in debates about wokeism instead of focusing on what unites us all.
It is a woke mess.
People are more fired up about clickbait stories and controversies than about the humanity and inspiration that the Olympics are meant to represent. Some are even outraged that the organizers are striving to make this the greenest Olympics ever, adding to the noise rather than celebrating the essence of the games. It seems like the true spirit of the Olympics is getting overshadowed by these distractions. But don't you think if Olympics are being accused of being woke, then there must be some truth to it? Because where there's smoke, there's fire. Paris 2024 has made a bold promise to cut the event's carbon footprint by half compared to the average of previous summer games. The Athletes' Village, located in the northern suburbs of Paris, was specifically designed to highlight cutting-edge, eco-friendly technology. This push for sustainability aims to set a new standard for future Olympics and demonstrate a commitment to both environmental responsibility and the future of global events. The cardboard beds in the Athletes' Village have turned into a symbol of the ongoing culture war, with some critics arguing that the push for eco-friendliness has gone too far. Despite 26 world records being shattered at the Paris 2024 Olympics, these beds have sparked controversy. Before the athletes even arrived, they were dubbed anti-S beds, although the real intention was to prevent 15,000 bed bases from ending up in a landfill. The beds were meant to be a sustainable choice, but the debate over their use has overshadowed the game's achievements and the impressive performances of the athletes. It's a classic example of how attempts to balance environmental responsibility with practicality can become entangled in larger cultural debates.
For those wondering about the cardboard beds in the village, I'm going to show you what they look like.
Gilad Cohen, co-founder of the Australian cardboard bed-based brand Yona, defended the Olympic beds, calling them sturdy, sustainable, and even S-proof. According to Cohen, cardboard is an amazing material for a bed base that can be used for sleeping, relaxing, watching TV, and any other bedroom activities. He emphasized that Yona beds are designed to last over a decade, countering claims that the beds are impractical or a gimmick. The organizers also introduced recyclable cardboard beds, which many athletes have found to be incredibly uncomfortable. Social media is full of complaints from athletes, with some, like gymnast Frederick Richard, even ordering real beds to be shipped to them because they couldn't tolerate the cardboard ones for just a few weeks.
He shipped his own mattress to the Olympic Village. Richard explained, "Everyone's complaining about beds and stuff.
There's a theory floating around that these beds were designed not just to be eco-friendly, but also to discourage athletes from becoming new stars by making their stay less comfortable. Meanwhile, the U.S. men's basketball team decided they'd had enough and opted to stay in a hotel instead. This choice, which costs around $15 million, completely negates the sustainability efforts when you consider the luxury of air conditioning and proper beds that come with their hotel stay. Joel Embiid, towering at 7 feet tall, is certainly not going to find a cardboard bed comfortable. Even if the French aren't known for their warm hospitality to foreign travelers, it seems like common sense would dictate that asking someone of his size to sleep on a cardboard bed is pretty unreasonable. It's clear that this situation isn't doing any favors for the comfort and respect of the athletes, especially those who need accommodations tailored to their needs. Athletes are also complaining about the city's green transportation for the Olympics. Despite promises from the organizers that shuttles would be sustainable and that athletes could rely on an app to get them to their events, many are finding that these transportation options are falling short. It seems that the sustainable travel plan isn't working as smoothly as advertised, adding to the growing list of frustrations.
Between respecting and disrespecting. And the number one thing you always talk about is tolerance. At what point are Christians like, nah, bro, we can't.
So the French daily Le Parisien just dropped some major news. The organizers of the Paris Games are seriously scrambling to fix their transportation mess. Athletes are getting super frustrated with the crazy delays. Get this, 6 swimmers from the South Korean team were so fed up that they ditched the Olympic Village and booked a hotel nearby. Why? Because their shuttle rides, which were supposed to take 45 minutes, turned into a 2-hour ordeal. So they said, forget this, we'll just walk to the pool. Isn't this exactly what green critics have been warning about? They've been saying that before we jump into all these eco-friendly buzzwords like plant-based and sustainability, we really need to do our homework. How can we expect these policies to work if we're asking people to settle for less and deal with all this hassle? What do you think? Are we just setting ourselves up for failure with these so-called green solutions? Well, the Paris Olympics have turned into a bit of a mess for the International Olympic Committee, IOC, and it's a real shame because the athletes who have dedicated their lives to competing for their countries are getting a raw deal. The controversy isn't just about the questionable opening ceremony. It's also the so-called woke policies that are making things tough for both athletes and viewers. The games were marketed as the most sustainable ever, with buzzwords like plant-based, green, and sustainable being thrown around. However, it seems that these ideals have backfired. Athletes are struggling with food shortages because the organizers tried to implement a 1/3 plant-based menu. Elite athletes need high-protein diets, and now they're having to ration meat and eggs. This was an obvious oversight, as anyone familiar with athlete nutrition could have predicted these issues. The British team even had to bring in an extra cook to their headquarters because the food in the Olympic Village wasn't cutting it. The German national field hockey team described the food situation as a disaster.
Million different other things during the Olympics. You had to single out the Last Supper?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
On top of that, the organizers decided to forego air conditioning in the name of environmentalism, adding another layer of discomfort for the athletes. It's clear that the push for sustainability has hit some serious bumps, and it's causing frustration all around. Aren't these the same people who keep warning us about the dangers of extreme heat and how global warming will lead to deadly heat waves? They've been telling us we need to adapt to these changes. Yet, here they are, putting athletes in conditions where they're essentially baking in a sauna, unable to sleep properly because it's so hot. With temperatures set to hit 94 degrees Fahrenheit in Paris, it's a bit ironic and frustrating. It's hard to push an agenda about the dangers of global warming and the need for adaptation when you're not even providing basic comfort for the people directly involved. If you're advocating for environmental changes, it seems only fair to ensure that the conditions you're putting people in don't contradict the very message you're promoting.
Upsetting because the whole world now speaks about freedom of choice, and they ask everyone to express them.
And then there was the much-hyped controversial opening ceremony. Organizers promised a jaw-dropping spectacle, but instead, the rain-soaked boat parade on the river scene made headlines for all the wrong reasons. Church leaders, conservatives, and even U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump were fuming over a segment that seemed to parody Jesus' Last Supper with drag queens and lesbian DJ Barbara Bush. The backlash was intense, with accusations flying and artistic director Thomas Jolly having to deny any such intention. The situation got so heated that it led to online H and police complaints.
See the opening ceremonies completely blaspheme and mock the Christian faith with their interpretation of the Last Supper
So with the Olympics dominating the news, another wild story has exploded on social media. There's a rumor swirling that the Paris opening ceremony might involve some satanic rituals. Yeah, you heard that correctly. After the Paris Olympics kicked off on Saturday, the big buzz isn't about Kelly Clarkson's surprise appearance or just a general WTF. It's all about whether the ceremony was actually satanic. The Olympics, known for celebrating global diversity and inclusivity, is facing backlash this year for a couple of reasons. First, there's the French government's controversial ban on the hijab for Muslim female athletes, which seems at odds with the event's inclusive vibe.
We first see this metal horse galloping down the river, and then what just so happens to come behind him? Well, a pair of wings.
But it doesn't stop there. The opening ceremony has been criticized for incorporating elements that some people see as satanic and disrespectful to Christianity. This has sparked a heated debate about spiritual warfare, secularism, and materialism. To add fuel to the fire, a poll from a parody account on X called Not Elon Musk has revealed that tens of thousands of adults, some of whom likely have real jobs involving actual fact-checking, and some bots, of course, think the ceremony was definitely satanic. This charge was further amplified by Andrew Tate, a known online intellectual currently facing charges of rape, and posting a clip of one of the opening ceremony's tableaus referencing the historic event of Marie Antoinette's beheading. Tate wrote, "Satanists control the West, and they show you that they worship the devil." It's not a conspiracy theory. They literally show you. Are you blind? That particular segment was also set to heavy metal music by Unbelievably. That is just the beginning of the burning pile of evidence that suggests Satan spent several months planning the opening ceremony. High-ranking members of the clergy from churches that have only ever shown themselves to be of the highest moral caliber have also bemoaned one particular scene from the ceremony, saying it derided and mocked Christianity. They were joined by conservative media, conservative politicians, news.com.au, and many people who've paid to have their Twitter accounts verified. Their complaints were then amplified by other media as clear evidence of a backlash against the opening ceremony, and not a lack of analysis of this particular portion of the ceremony, be an inability to discern when you're unwittingly acting as a mouthpiece for culture war warriors, or see the results of pickling oneself in the rank vat of the 24-hour news and social media cycle. So, are we blind? Do the devil walk amongst us? Is the Paris Organizing Committee part of the demonic global cabal? Let's examine the evidence. First of all, a metal horse galloped down the scene. Not a single journalist bothered to interview or identify this horse after it did the impossible and galloped on water. Once again, underserved by the liberal mainstream media, Carrie Bradshaw and people can't help but wonder whether this might be the horse ridden by the first horseman of the apocalypse, who some scholars describe as the Antichrist or the offspring of Satan. Then women rose from the water in a tableau sold to us as being about the famous French value of equality, and in recognition of the Olympics achieving something resembling gender equality, golden statues of women rose from the Seine. You know who else rose from the water according to Botticelli? Venus. The pagan goddess is the namesake for the planet Venus, which is also known as the morning star, aka Lucifer. Women have also been proven, via persecution, hysterical fear-mongering, and scapegoating, to be witches, and witches were sometimes said to have communed with the devil. Before the yellow cartoon characters created by the Parisian animation studio Illumination accidentally on purpose appropriated this name and got cast in the opening ceremony, minions were best known as the envoys and property of one Lucifer S. Atan. This despicable casting cannot be a coincidence. Mr. Dog, the Dogfather, was not technically part of the opening ceremony, but was there and is an official commentator with NBC, aka the liberal media. What does Snoop do when he's not crip walking with the Olympic torch and cheering on athletes from the sidelines? Smoke pot, weed, ganja, Mary Jane, and marijuana, aka the devil's lettuce. 3 X users have reported seeing a golden bull at the opening ceremony. There are unconfirmed reports that it was Moloch, a pagan god or demon most commonly associated with child sacrifice, and that he was smoking weed with Snoop beforehand. There is a statue of a golden bull at Palais de Chaillot in the Trocadero area in Paris, which looks a lot like the one in the pictures being shared by Satan hunters online, and might be what's represented here. But demonic bullshit is as demonic bullshit does. The portion of the ceremony featuring 17 drag artists has been described by media and the righteously outraged everywhere as evoking the famous Da Vinci painting The Last Supper, French Olympic athletes are banned from wearing the hijab, but Piers Morgan is bang on. And this is the worst affront to any group of people of a particular religious denomination ever. Monsignor Emmanuel Gobiliard, a delegate of the bishops of France for the Games, said some French athletes had had trouble sleeping because of the fallout. While the official Olympics Twitter account described the blue guy as Dionysus, the Greek god of winemaking, orchards and fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, and ritual madness to name but a few things, thankfully one ex-user pointed out the obvious cover-up and noted that is precisely what Satanists acting out a ritual display of cannibalism would say. Other Satanists and apologists have said the scene might be referencing a painting by Dutch artist Jan van Bielert called The Feast of the Gods, which can be seen at Magnin Museum in Dijon, France, aka the country hosting the Olympics as opposed to the Last Supper, which can be viewed in Milan, Italy, a country not hosting the Olympics. Art historian Louise Marshall has said there were 17 drag artists, and that for the tableau to be a reference to the Last Supper, you'd need 12. That's basic. You kind of have to have that number, the expert in Renaissance art told the New York Times. Marshall recognized the performers as voguing, as opposed to standing in groups of 3 as the apostles do in Da Vinci's painting. Voguing is something only the devil-pilled know about. The Organizing Committee of Paris 2024 has issued a non-apology that is nonetheless being reported as an apology, saying clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. The opening ceremony tried to celebrate community tolerance. We believe this ambition was achieved. If people have taken any offense, we are really sorry. This is exactly what you'd expect from satanic globalists who don't want their eyes wide shut masks ripped from their malevolent faces. The French, who are not at all famous for not caring what the rest of the world thinks, did not give this non-apology in the hope that people just shut the F up about it. Once described by Alexander Petrovsky's daughter as hideous in season 6 of S in the City, Paris edition, the Eiffel Tower is very obviously satanic. Invert this or any stock image of the Eiffel Tower. Case closed. If you study the science of numerology, you will know that P is equal to 7A is equal to 1, R is equal to 9, I is equal to 9, and S is equal to 1. Paris's number is 9. One person wrote, "There were so many satanic symbols throughout. I'm telling you, this is a spiritual battle. The biggest victory of Satan is convincing people that he does not exist. They worship him. Stay prayed up." Another man added, "It's crazy how the athletes are the last thing on the minds of these organizers. They don't even win real gold, silver, or bronze medals anymore. They are plated. Could the opening ceremony just have been an overloaded mess of completely bonkers and very French creativity and artistic license? It's possible, but that's what Joe has already talked about many times. That's it for today. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.